OpenAI is actually volunteering equity in their company to the US government. And for the first time in recent history that I can remember, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are agreeing on this. Now, take from that what you will. You talk about the two most far apart people on the political spectrum. That's crazy in itself. So it makes you wonder what is really in this proposal? What is the idea that they have? And fundamentally, it turns out that this is really it's a sovereign wealth fund. And the basis behind it is that AI is going to take a lot of jobs, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to generate insane profits once it really reaches its true potential. So the American people, as the people that supported the first, versions of these companies, because you got to remember, OpenAI is an American company, Anthropic's an American company, Google's an American company. All of these companies technically live within the American GDP, and a lot of the American population is going to be impacted by the AI that takes their job. And so there's been a lot of discussion in the past about UBI, like universal basic income, and just kind of giving a little slice to everybody and, making sure people can pay their bills and stuff like that. But that brings all these questions about inflation and money supply, and there's all this complication around it. But now what we're seeing is kind of an alternative to that. So instead of just printing money as UBI, we can set up a sovereign wealth fund, and that sovereign wealth fund is going to be built entirely on the profits of AI that develops within America. And this is not a totally new concept, right? So like Saudi Arabia has the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is entirely funded by the oil profits that they get because they're a very oil rich nation. There's other countries that have this type of concept set up where they have a national wealth fund so that they can use that money on behalf of the country to make investments and then create wealth for the people of that country. And so now with AI being so crazy, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, of all people, are in agreement that we should have our own wealth fund built off of AI.
Yeah, this is crazy because, like, if you think about it, this is more like how we as a nation deal with like oil policy and energy defense. Like, this is getting a whole nother lane. And I believe, if I'm not right, this AI Sovereign Wealth Fund Act, let me see here, this would impose a one-time 50% stock tax on the largest AI companies. And when I was reviewing, it said everybody over 500 million plus would be involved in this, paid in shares, and place those shares into a public fund. This is insane, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a lot of things at once. So one, this is telling us that the government themselves believe that AI is going to be such a disruptor and such a valuable commodity in the global market that they're willing to nationalize at least part of it. And nationalization of assets is very hot and cold. Like, there's a lot of different sides to the argument of if you should nationalize certain assets. For example, gold is a nationalized asset. Oil, not technically a nationalized asset, but it operates in such a way that the government benefits a lot. We have gas tax, we have refinery tax, we have environmental tax, we have a lot of stuff that, while it doesn't officially nationalize the oil infrastructure, it does make it so that as that asset price goes up, the government also does get a higher revenue because you're going to pay a higher tax and a higher stipend and everything like that. So nationalizing a country's assets is not necessarily a new concept. It's not so common in the US because we believe in free markets. We believe in capitalism. We believe in, letting everybody just kind of price adjust themselves and letting entrepreneurs, grow. And other countries like, Venezuela, like that was one of the big deals with Venezuela, is that when the communist regime took over, they basically nationalized the oil and they kicked out BP and they kicked out Exxon, and it was a whole big deal. And so that's not what we're seeing here. We're not seeing the government come in and say, hey, we are going to take over the profits from AI. The reason that this is so weird is that OpenAI themselves actually went to the government and volunteered for this position. They basically said, we think that AI is going to have such an impact on everybody, and it's in such a public benefit and such a public interest that we should voluntarily be required to give you 50% of the private equity stake that we have in the company. Now, you can look at this a couple of different ways. And I have my way, but I'm really curious to hear what your way is, which is my opinion is that OpenAI truly is just looking for any way to not die out. And I hate to say that, but from what I've seen in the public sphere, from what I've seen from opinions and from adoption and from the revenue numbers and the enterprise allocation, like OpenAI is losing this race, and they're losing it more and more every quarter. And that's kind of how they think about it. They have to look at how many enterprise clients did they get during the quarter? How many government contracts did they get during the quarter? You know, they're trying to compete with Anthropic and with Google and with Microsoft and with Apple. Like, they're trying to compete in the AI space, and unfortunately they're just losing. And it's not to say they don't have great products. It's not to say they aren't coming out with very innovative, really cool things that are serving a lot of people. But in terms of who's really leading the advanced AI race, I don't think it's OpenAI. I don't think they're in the lead. So with that, when you know that you're losing this race and you know that this race has literally, it's everything. It's win or die. Like, that's OpenAI's only choice right now, is to get themselves into such a cemented position in the market that they simply cannot be erased. And that's where I see this effort coming from. They're trying to go to the government, and they've done this for a while. When Anthropic said that they would not provide military support to the government, OpenAI was the first one to come in and say, hey, we will do what you want. Let's do business. Like, they are, in my opinion, more desperate. And that shows with this, where they're trying to say, hey, we will voluntarily give the US government 50% of the profits that we get as a for-profit company. And, you know, what happens after that, we don't care, because we're here for the good of humanity. And I think that's, you can only really ride that for so long. You know, like, you can only really ride that message for so long.